workshop, and the mayor is having problems with heat, so he may not be able to make it. So I hope you just put up with me for how long it takes. I'll do my best to do things right. But okay, we'll come all the way here. Special presentation for Chief Raymond Drenner.
Yes, sir. We have a special presentation by the police department this afternoon. However, I don't know, since I can't talk about this piece of paper in front of you, it's called the June the 11th Rock the Block Party.
July the 11th.
July 11th. Is that okay? Oh, I'm sorry, I can't talk about that. But we're gonna have a lot of fun downtown. We have street dance and vendors and get crazy and do wild things. With that said, come on down, man. It's all yours.
How y'all this evening? Good. We want to come here this evening to recognize a special member of our department, Sergeant Donnie Cooper, who just retired at the end of what actually is officially ended this month, right? He has 40 years with the police department. I was 14 years old when Donnie started the police department. So he's been here a long time, and we want to take just a moment to recognize him and give him something for it. You know, Donnie's a unique individual. You know, when it comes to employees, Donnie's I guess you would call him a throwback on today's standards. He came to work every day. He was always early. He did his job. He did whatever you asked him to do. And believe it or not, I've never heard him complain about anything. You know, he was a big asset to us, and we hate to see him go. And he's kind of an end of the era, because he was one of the guys that had been here for a while when I started here, and he was kind of one of the folks that we looked up to, mine and Chief Dowdy's generation. So what we want to do is present him with a plaque tonight. Sergeant Donnie Cooper, Tifton Police Department, appreciation for 40 years of outstanding service and dedication, faithfully serving the citizens of Tifton from 1975 to 2015. I'm sure Donnie has plenty to say.
I appreciate it. I enjoy it.
Get a picture of it.
Sergeant Cook, on behalf of the entire city council, we thank you for your service, and we appreciate all you've done for the department. And don't just sit around and fish. Come and see us. And thank you so very much.
Okay, thank you.
The next item is about a grant that we get. It's a yearly grant that we get. It's called the Edward Burns Grant. It comes through the Department of Justice. It's what we traditionally call the JAG grant. This year's for $10,600 and something dollars. There's 10 states in here. It's usually based on what your crime rate is and what the program can afford at the time to give to departments. I understand that, well, I know that ours is went down. I want to say last year it was like $13,000, the year before, almost it was like 16. Valdosta has also been going down, so evidently the program doesn't have quite what it used to have. But it's something that our plan is to use it to pay for overtime in high crime areas. One of the things we've looked at to use it for is body cameras. And when we looked at the price, and I think originally we had looked at buying like 16 body cameras, but then we got to looking at the back end cost, the cost of the server to save all the video and stuff like that, and that became, it's a much bigger cost than just buying the cameras. I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, I thought Stephen was in here, it was going to cost us like $21,000 and something just for a server and the storage space of the account that it's going to take to keep videos in it. So we're having to kind of adjust along the way to try to figure out how to do that in another way. We may end up using some of this money to do it, but it's something that we get geared in. We're glad we got it again this year.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you, Major Brenner. Okay.
You're going to have to talk louder.
As you heard, I was trying to talk about the public hearing regarding the JAG grant. Is there anyone here that'd like to make any comments? Vice Mayor, I see no comments, so I'd ask that public hearing be closed.
The public hearing is closed. Okay, we're moving along to discussion of the Frisbee Golf Course in Fulwood Park. Council Person
That's
Judy
me.
Smith.
That's me. One of the privileges that I have being on City Council is to be able to work with a group called the Outreach Marketing Group. It's a tourism group, an offshoot of the Tifton County Tourism Association. And our group was organized in order to provide activities that would draw tourists to our community. And those activities were going to be mostly in town, focusing on downtown and the areas within the city limits. And recognizing that a tourist may not be someone necessarily who spends the night, but anyone who doesn't live here, who comes into our community for recreation, for festivals, for special events such as Rock the Block, which will be happening on July the 11th, right out here in front of City Hall. But one of our members, Patrick Coons, who I call Mr. Music because he's always the music connection when it comes to these festivals and special events, has come up with an excellent idea. And if you've not heard about Frisbee Golf, which I had fortunately heard of and knew what it was about, but Patrick has an idea about using Fulwood Park to develop a Frisbee golf course. We have the opportunity to apply for a state tourism grant at the end of this month. So we're not sure if we're going to apply at the end of this month or if we're going to save this project and maybe apply for the grant next year. But we did want to bring it to council to get your input and your so you can hear from Patrick exactly what the proposal is for the Frisbee Golf. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Patrick and let him explain that to you and how it can work in Fulwood Park.
Okay, thank you everybody. I'm not real familiar with how this works, but apparently I'm being recorded. Do y'all have an Elmo here where I can throw something up for everyone to see, or as far as pictures? Any type of audiovisual device? Okay, well I might just do like this then.
There you go.
What I have here is a map of Fulwood Park, and I'm going to pass this around for the councilmen and councilwomen to see in just one moment. But basically, the north end of the park is an area that I believe is underutilized. There's a number of narrow kind of walkways and hedge-filled grassy areas that fits pretty well for a disc golf course. In talking with Danny McLaren, I do understand that we are not allowed to cut out any trees based upon the contract with the family that donated the Fulwood Park. But I've been able to design a course that is a 12-hole disc golf course that fits very well to the hedges on the north end, as well as using some open areas to create some larger and longer holes. And without going too much into it, I can just kind of walk you through the general map, and I'm going to pass around the pictures as well. I don't know, how much time am I going to have allotted, Julie?
Just a few minutes. I mean,
Okay.
just a
Just
sort of a
just
general
brief
overview. Yeah.
Okay, well, in the middle, on the north end, there's a traffic circle with parking spots. We're going to start just on the north end with the first hole. It does back up right up against the parking spots, and it will provide a nice area to put up a sign with an overall map of the course, as well as course rules. The way disc golf works, you would have a small area that is a concrete tee box, and it's one of the few things that you would have to actually put in the park that's this permanent fixture. You would have a tee box area that's probably from here to that column, and a person can actually take a step or two and throw it and then the idea is wherever it falls, you just pick it up and throw from that spot. The baskets are not like a conventional golf hole. Instead, you have a much smaller concrete pad that has a connector inserted into the concrete, and the baskets are metal with chains hanging around it, so that if the frisbee hits the basket, the chains keep it inside of the basket. And you must throw your frisbee and it land in the basket to be considered ending the hole. And you obviously count your number of strokes. The lower the strokes, the better. The good thing about these baskets is that the baskets can be unchained. There's a padlock on each basket that can be unlocked, and I'm sure Mr. McLaren or someone with the Park Services can go around if there's an event where parking is needed or any type of activity such as vendors need to take the spot. You can just pick up the baskets and say the course is closed. So it's not something that's going to interfere with any other uses. In fact, I believe I've narrowly tailored this so that we're using areas of the park that probably have no other conceivable use, in that you cannot remove trees there anyway. But if it pleases the city council, I'm just going to pass this around and let everyone take a look at some of the holes. And you can just flip through those, that's y'all's copy. But in doing this, the rough distances of the holes in feet would be about 190 feet for the first hole, up to 280 feet for the second hole, up to 270 feet for the third hole, roughly 190 feet for the fourth hole, roughly 225 feet maximum distance for the fifth hole. Then you would cross over onto the northeast side of the park, and you would have some lengthier holes, including number 6, which is around 333 feet optimal distance. Number 7, which is on the very northeast end, that's very sandy and open. You can have a hole there that's also over 300 feet, although I would like to remove a tree or two to make it over 400 feet, which is what a lot of disc golf enthusiasts would enjoy. 190 feet on the 8th, 225 on the 9th, 240, 200, and then 315 on number 12, which actually finishes up in the grassy area to the south of the playground, and then just to the north of the drainage ditch that runs through, which is a nice grassy area. Once again, it's just not really utilized for much else, probably other than throwing the frisbee or having some kind of activity like that. I do think it's going to be a low-cost project without looking at the nuts and bolts of it, just kind of a line item type price. I would expect this to come in well under $10,000. We do have an opportunity to apply for a 50-50 travel grant, tourism grant, and of course one of the aspects of that would be that it would bring in new tourists. I can state in my place that there are disc golf tournaments coming up in July in both Macon and in Valdosta. So we're behind the curve on this, ladies and gentlemen. This is something that is a fast-growing sport. It takes very little outlay financially, and it's something that people can enjoy for lifetimes. So I appreciate your time and consideration on this matter.
Patrick, I got a question for you.
Certainly.
I play a lot of golf, so I know that there's 18 holes. Why 12? Should we cut it to 9 and make those holes longer? Or?
Well, the idea would be that because of the distance, because of the trees that are already in there,
right,
we can't actually extend the holes any longer. The 12 holes kind of just rise up out of the park. It's going to be very difficult. We could just stop at 9, but then it would end up with the 9th hole not bringing you back to where you finished at the clubhouse. Plus, it's very common for disc golf courses not to follow the 9 or 18 holes layout. You'll actually see a lot of disc golf courses with the number 12. In fact, I believe Nashville, Georgia has a temporary disc golf course they take in and out, and that's a 12-hole course.
Okay, all right, good.
So people just show up and they play?
It's absolutely free, which is also would cater well to low-income families or low-income sports enthusiasts. The only thing you would need is a frisbee. Most people have that are professional at this have a bag full of discs, being that you have a driver that goes much farther, and then you have a mid-range shot. You also have a putter that's heavier, where you almost throw it up in the air and let it drop down into the basket. So the people that are very good at this will have literally 9 or 10 discs they take in a bag with them around. But the beauty of it is you can also have a placard at the beginning of each hole, which you're going to need to have that in order to be recognized by the professional associations across the country. That provides us an opportunity to partner with local businesses to sponsor a hole. So we could offer a $500 hole sponsorship that would help defray the cost of this, and that would go towards costs, startup costs, or literally we could probably put our half of the 50% up from parks money, get the 50% match from the government, and then use the whole sponsorship monies for other projects such as having an app that shows the layout of the course for those that have smartphones, for having a website or things like that. But it is a situation where there's very little actual footprint that's left. I believe an 18-hole course would have less of a concrete footprint than a tennis court would. So you're talking about very little of an outlay as far as the concrete pads that you have to pour, and it naturally uses an area around these hedges that's very nice. And I don't know if you can tell some of these holes. See if I can find one that might show up for the people at home. There are a couple holes that really have these nice hedges. You can see a hedge right there. I tried to do it to where you're putting the hedge into play, and that's something I think you're not going to find in most other golf courses in South Georgia. Most of them are in open fields to where you don't have these tight little shots. A couple holes like number 2, number 9 are very tight, and if you happen to have an errant shot, it might bounce off a tree or two and make it more challenging. Any other questions?
It's just an exciting idea. And I tell you, this outreach marketing group is phenomenal. These people are so creative, and the ideas they come up with, like Frisbee golf, you know. So anyway, there you go.
Okay, thank you, Councilman.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Patrick.
Mr. Combs. So this is something that the city manager will bring to us maybe down the road when Chris and the mayor's here. But I think it's a good idea. Anything to bring tourists to Tifton, you know, to bring Tifton together as a whole. You know, it seems like some fun things for families to do, and that's what we need a lot of.
Yes, yes, sir. And I will add that out of, I mentioned Valdosta and Macon have courses. There's also one at Darton College that's a 9-hole course, as well as a full 18-hole course in Albany. There's one in Tallahassee. There's one in Moultrie and Thomasville, I believe, or at least Moultrie. So there's a lot of areas that have already jumped on this, I'm not going to call it a craze, but it is a sport that is starting to gain more popularity and widespread appeal.
Well, thank you, sir. We really appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. And I know that in order to apply for this travel grant, it would be due at the end of the month. So I'd make a motion to accept my proposed disc golf course. Do I hear a second?
We can't vote tonight.
Julie, how's that going to work? I mean, are we going to be able to meet that deadline for travel at the end of this month? Is that possible?
I'll get with Larry on that. I'm not
Okay.
sure. I don't know, but
Just let me know. I know there's other types of grants that are possible.
Oh,
but
yeah.
This seems to make sense as far as the travel
Yeah,
tourism
absolutely.
aspect.
But
Absolutely.
if you know, getting the grant money is, but
It's time consuming and,
yeah,
very.
yeah, we'll.
Well, I mean, it
Fast
would
is
take
running
some
out of
time to
time.
write the grant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at the grant, but from what I understand, it's not that difficult.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it's through the Georgia Tourism Association, and Angela and Abby and Tyrone with the Spearman Agency, who are our tourism coordinators, can actually write the grant.
Well, I didn't
So
know
we
if-
would just need to provide some information.
I guess we just have to make the park available for that use, I mean, or,
Well, two things have to happen here.
okay.
One, since there is a matching grant, that we would have to come up with either the cash or in-kind.
In kind is fine.
And for that, we could put this on the, what's it, July. Council meeting, for you guys to take action to authorize us to apply for this grant, because if we get it, and
Yeah.
we haven't been authorized to.
Sure.
Get the 50%.
Sure.
And then the other, action that would need to be taken is the city council would need to give us direction and the authority to use Fulton Park for this purpose.
Okay. Well, it's happening all around us, so we would be well advised to jump onto this.
And like Patrick said, the course can be sort of dismantled for special events, you know, whatever, if we need it to park for some other purpose, so.
All right. Okay. Discussion of proposed lighted streets. No. Discussion for proposed facilities for rental agreement at the mine. Ms. Martin.
Good evening, everyone. We came to you several months ago, if you'll recall, and talked to you about the possibility of renting the Mayan to the citizenry in the area. And this is the proposed rental agreement that we are asking you to consider. A couple of things that we've had to keep in mind in developing this proposal is that, the Mayan is a working, busy facility. It's used at least 5 days a week, and sometimes in the evenings. So we tried to structure this agreement around that, meaning Robert Reed and I looked at the most practical times for it to be available, and our suggestion is that the building would be available on Friday evenings and also on Saturdays. But the rest of the time, I think it would be a little far-reaching to try to do anything else in the building the other days of the week. But that will be up to you. We will make it happen if you want it to be additional days. Also, because of the historic nature of the building, we felt like we have to be very careful in the types of events that are held. We have to be careful with, structural or damage or anything that could happen when another venue comes into the building. We've had a number of issues over at the Leroy Rogers Senior Center in the past. We've been able to curtail those through various aspects, but what we're thinking about is events such as weddings and receptions, private parties, or corporate events, things of that nature that could be considered. We feel like there should not be any events held here where there's a charge to come into the building. I think you just ask for issues and challenges when you do that, allow that. So a few of the highlights, we're going to be asking for a security deposit. It'll be a deposit that we feel, unless it's a major damage, we feel like this deposit would cover any issues that come up, and that would be $400, a refundable deposit as long as everything's fine when the venue's over with. We're going to suggest that the hours be such that you can actually start as stated in the contract in the beginning hour. It can be 8 a.m. if they want it, but that it should not be any longer than 10 p.m. with the vacating of the building complete, which means cleanup and everything by 12 midnight. If you've looked at the agreement, on page 2 in section number 4, there are several items, but specifically I wanted to mention that leasee shall not allow or permit any alcohol unless it's specifically authorized by the city manager. In other words, I think we could get possibly a permit if we want to think about doing that, as some of our other venues do for a private affair. But there again, that's something for you all just to think about. We will require a building supervisor, at least one for every 100 folks. Anyone over, the capacity for the building is about 125. So if we have over 100 folks, we feel like we probably need 2 building supervisors for that. The leasee would be responsible for the safety and security of the participants, and they will have to indemnify the city and hold us harmless for any damages or loss of property or injury or anything of that nature. They'll have to sign a hold harmless agreement. And they'll be responsible for replacement of any repairs or damage that does occur. They're going to be responsible to have attendance or security on site. And the suggested rental will be a half a day, which would be suggested from 8 to 12, would be a flat fee of $500, or a whole day, a rate of $800, with an additional cost for the use of the kitchen. And I did a little survey of the area to see what the rates were. The rates here are just a little bit higher, not much, but I just felt like that was important because of the nature of the building. And if we have to do repairs, it's going to be more than your average building would be. So that's it in a nutshell. If you all will look at it and let me know, or Larry know, if you would like any changes to it, just let us know.
One thing that, I don't know how the rest of the council feels about it, but, you mentioned loss, damage of property, injury, and theft. I think in order to mitigate potentially those aspects of renting out the city hall, you should eliminate the alcohol aspect of it being able to be drank inside of the city hall. I'm almost for that for all of our buildings, I guess. I mean, you know, the Rhythm and Ribs separates the outdoor. I think that it's also monitored by our police department. That's just my thought as far as possibly eliminating the alcohol from being able to be distributed or sold or used or drank or whatever inside this place.
Whatever your wishes are.
Okay.
I know we did put a mechanism in place a few years ago to accommodate certain special events for alcohol inside a venue, and that's why it's here.
Mm-hmm.
But there again, it's completely at your discretion.
I think we're going to need to leave that in personally, because if you're having a wedding reception, even if you're just having a champagne toast, you know, and maybe you're not serving alcohol, but you're just going to have a champagne toast or something. I think if people are going to be willing to pay these rates to rent, you're going to have a responsible clientele. But I think for the events
the person
that,
who puts their name on it might be responsible, but
Right.
the guests may not be
right,
responsible.
but that's their, you know, that's why they're putting their name on it. But I think for these type of events, serving alcohol would be an expectation, just like the dinner that was here the other night. Did they have alcohol, do you know?
They actually have a dinner over at the,
Oh, and then they came here and had the meeting. Okay, never mind, that's not a good example.
Well, there's a condition in the contract as well, that it's the lessee's responsibility that everybody gets out of hand if they be removed. If they don't remove them, then the building supervisor or the police can remove them. So I think that if you are putting a lot on the lessee to make sure that the conduct of the event is responsible, but I think that there is a provision there that looks like someone's not behaving themselves, so to speak, they have to leave the venue.
And I think the other key thing is your building supervisor, Councilmember Eller, so we would just have to make sure that we have very responsible supervisors here. And that those would be folks that the city
Employees.
would, yes, sir.
Okay.
The city would employ those folks.
I've got a I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, my question was, I was wondering about the alcohol. If say, the caterer had a license like at the UGA Center, if the caterer have obtained that 1 day permit, you know, the alcohol for 1 day, like we do over at the Holly Davidson place, I was wondering, would that be something that
Well,
we could
that's
consider
what, you know,
look
the
into?
clause that's in there says that it would be specifically authorized by the city manager, and that would be through that permitting process.
Okay, okay.
You know, I guess my concerns just strictly came from that this place is historic, and
Yes.
we
Yeah.
spent a lot of good money
Spent a lot of money
putting it
to
back
model.
together and making it as beautiful it is, to see if something got out of hand and something got damaged or information, was seen and things like that. I mean, you got a lot of things that could go on that, you know.
That's right.
Well, and I'm not saying that people are, there's some responsible folks that
Yeah.
can have a good drink or two, but I'm just saying at the end of the day, that's what I guess I'm looking at, the broader picture here about.
Okay.
And, you know, I don't know, Rob can probably answer this, but we might be able to put a cap on the type of event that could have alcohol.
Yeah.
Well, I think that you have the indemnity provision in the agreement that you're gonna have the $400 deposit up front. And of course, that may not cover a whole lot. Then you have the indemnity paragraph that makes the lessee responsible for any and all damages and indemnifying us. The only issue that you get with that is whether or not the lessee is gonna have the seat of the pants to pay for the damages.
Exactly. I was gonna say, are you gonna sue somebody? You know?
So it's, I think that it's, hopefully we'll just have responsible lessees that have the seat of the pants, and we'll just, I don't know how you screen that. But I understand the concern.
Yeah.
I have a question on the usage, the hours. If someone wanted to come in, I know it's got the half day, 8 to 12, whole day, 8 to 10. If someone wanted to come in and rent it from like 10 to 2, is that just considered a
That
half
would
day?
still be a half
Okay.
day. The 8 to 12 is really
Okay.
sort of an example.
Okay.
Well,
Okay,
you,
thank you.
okay, you're welcome. We, uh, the people that live, the apartments, you know, we said you were gonna do it, with the time frame of, you know, like, for you say from 10 to 2 or whatever, but, it wouldn't be disturbing to those people that live here.
Well, they would have to end their event by 10 p.m.
Okay.
and they would have to be out of the building by
Right,
12
yes.
p.m.
Okay, so okay. But then, so you
And
gonna
that would
look
be
into
one
that?
day, well, Friday evening or Saturday evening.
Okay.
I don't think we're envisioning any, concerts or anything like that.
Yeah, I just didn't want us to be disturbing to the people that live
Right.
upstairs, you know. I was thinking about, you know, they are tenants and residents down here, so we need to look out for that.
I'm thinking things like we had with the Georgia Bar Association when they came in, use the space,
Okay.
a wedding reception or a
Right,
wedding.
right.
But as far as putting down
A Wayne
we're
Dang
not,
booth.
we're not gonna turn it into a bar.
Well, I understand that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Reiner, you the discussion of proposed street light policy?
You know, for years, ever since I was a public works director, I've always been told that the criteria for streetlights in Tifton were intersections, dangerous curves, or high crime areas. And we were challenged recently about where's our streetlight policy so that we can provide this to the citizens of Tifton. And when Ms. Morgan started looking for it and the public works people started looking for it, come to find out we don't have a written policy. So now you have a written policy, a proposed written policy before you that reflects what we've done for the past 16 years, basically, that I've been here. And the considerations are, again, public safety and for the pedestrians and vehicular traffic, and also budgetary concerns. Streetlights are very expensive. They go anywhere from around $13 per light per month up to as high as $47 per light per month, depending on the size of the light and the type of fixture. So that's also included in the proposed policy. So if you can look through it, if there's anything in there, their applications, they would come through the city manager that they can apply for. They would come to me for final approval, and would also include the police department in the process to see if there were any high crime areas that we needed to be better lit. So I think it's a very comprehensive policy. Rhonda has done a wonderful job putting it together. I don't know where she stole all that information from, but it sure does look good. If you have any questions about it, give us a call. We will be presenting this to you at the July council meeting.
Larry, I got one question for you.
Yes, sir.
When we approve a plan overlay development, who, obviously the lighting of that subdivision, who pays for the lighting? Is that something the city, if it's in city limits, obviously?
When someone wants to do a subdivision in Tifton now, they're required to put in all the infrastructure, water, sewer, gas, street lighting, sidewalks, curb and gutter, roads. The city no longer has that kind of 50-50 participation. If a developer wants to do a development, then they pay for it. We have warranty timeframes for all of the infrastructure when it goes in, and once that warranty period is over, the city of Tifton will assume the responsibility for the cost of the lighting. We'll take that on as soon as development is completed.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, discussion of resolution for amending the policy for honorary naming of city-owned streets, properties, and facilities provide the designation of historic land status. Mr. Reiner, Ms. Martin.
Thank you. Mr. Terrell was here when we adopted this policy the first go around. It was November of 2010. We'd had numerous requests for the naming of honorary namings. We've got street namings out there that have been there forever and a day. And this policy was put together to be able to establish a process for taking those applications and testing the lengths of time that they would be needed, and making sure there was a time frame so that we wouldn't have every street in Tifton or park or whatever named after someone. And the current policy provides for a 10-year period. What I did for the historic landmark status was just go back to this policy and amend it to provide for that designation. And it's basically the same policy that was adopted in 2010, and the amendment is to include, is for the naming of certain private properties or facilities for the designation of historic landmark status. Now this document was originally done for the naming of city-owned streets and properties and things of that nature with a time limit on it. The designation of landmark status would be a permanent status in my mind, and I think probably in everyone else's, because it would be for private properties. So that's what I've put in here, is to include certain private properties or facilities in the honorary designation program. And if you'll look on page 2, the part of the application process, it says if a private property or facility is being nominated, written permission of the property owner designee in addition to stated requirements will be necessary. And also in the formal review process, it says council will review the contents of the application and make a decision in the honorary designation. If approved, the proponent will have 90 days to provide the necessary funding. All designations of public property shall sunset at the end of 10 years, and all designations of private property will be permanent. I didn't go into any detail about this. I know that the two of you were not here at that time. So if you have any questions after you review it, just let me know and we'll try to address those for you.
I do have a question now, if it's okay. I know with the street signage, obviously, that's going to say, the regular name of the street and then the honorary name. Is there any way, would it be wise for us to consider some type of signage for that landmark status, just a small placard or something that could be purchased?
Well, there actually is a specific type of emblem or implement for landmark status. I've been working with a gentleman, I can't recall his name right now, from the Southern Regional Commission, and he's done a little research for me.
Mm-hmm.
And there are specific emblems that we will use, and they're not cheap.
Okay.
But for something that's permanent, we need something that's going to stand the test of time.
Perfect. Okay.
So that's another piece of this little puzzle we'll bring back to you once we get everything in place. Anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Number 5, resolution for providing for the adoption of the FY 2016 City of Tifton budget. Mr. Ryan.
Mr. Vice Mayor, that was put in the workshop by Harold. Basically what it's about is we've already had the department head put with the city council. We've also had a public hearing on the FY 16 budget, and it will be covered, we'll cover that in the call meeting coming up right after the workshop.
Since it's on the agenda, could I ask questions now about the budget? It's taken me this long to go through this crazy book. Or do you want me to wait until the special called meeting?
Okay, wait till the special call meeting, please.
Okay, I'm just asking.
Okay. All right, number 6, resolution provide for alcohol beverages for Max Incorporated, Jay's Food, located at 10 Sandra Drive, Ms. Martin.
Yes, sir. Jay's Food Mart is under new ownership. They've applied for a wine and beer beverage package retail license. Background check on the owner, Amit Kumar Parmar, revealed no violations, as well as a background check on the manager, Jose Alvarado Jr., it revealed no violations. So staff is recommending approval of this alcohol license.
Okay. Do I need a vote? We need to.
Now, just
vote
an
on it?
FYI, when we do a background, we do a state of Georgia background and an FBI background for the entire country.
Under the call meeting, should we include that under the call meeting? Go ahead and approve it.
There, I don't think there's any hurry at that, that would be up to you all, though.
All right.
Okay. Ooh. Number 7, board report, Ms. Myers.
I'm sorry. All right, on the Planning and Zoning Commission, we have 2 expirations, Bobby Robinson and Tommy Knowles. Bobby Robinson does want to continue serving, checked with her. Tommy Knowles does not. I checked my file, I do not have anything pending for the Planning and Zoning Commission. We also have 2 vacancies still on the tree board. We have 2 applications. Lori Felton, who served previously, and also Elizabeth Moss, who is interested in serving. And I believe a couple of the other tree board members have expressed their appreciation of her applying. So that would take care of the tree board.
Okay. Thank you. Number 8, leasing of the recycling facility to Golden Environment. Mr. Redmond.
Yes. This is kind of just for your information, ancillary to the contract that we entered into with Golden Waste. We were going to lease the recycling facility. I think it's a little over 2.5 acres. We are working on a lease agreement with Golden for leasing that building. I believe we're talking about a year-to-year lease, since he's not really sure whether or not that building is going to be adequate, to fit his needs at this point. That property is owned 50-50, 50% by the county, 50% by the city. And we've got a draft. We talked to Mr. Golden yesterday afternoon. I think we've kind of come to terms, but we will be submitting that lease agreement to the county, their review and approval, and hopefully we'll be able to enter in that lease agreement with Mr. Golden and get that lease completed.
When do you anticipate us being able to start our recycling program? Larry?
Well, you should ask that question. We also discussed that yesterday with Mr. Golden. I will be getting with him again. Monday at 1, we're going to have an interview, if you will, with Latasha Ford from the Tifton Gazette. The short answer to it is August 3rd will be the first day of collection. As it stands right now, it will begin setting out the containers, I think it was mid-July, because we have to have them out there for 2 weeks, and then the collection starts after that. There's a lot of logistics going on behind this recycling program right now. The cans are here. There's 4,600 of them sitting off of 2nd Street, and but we're getting there.
Okay.
Just the end of that. So, that's the end of the workshop. So, we in and out, less than an hour.
Well, we have to have the call meeting, sir.
Yeah, we do. That blew that chance, didn't it? But thank you for coming. And
You just go ahead and call the meeting to order, Vice Chair.
I'll call.
There's one item on the call meeting, with the exception of executive session. And typically when we get to this point in the budgetary process, we've had the input from the department heads, as I mentioned earlier. We've had a public hearing, which we did on the, what was the date, 11th? The 11th. And we pretty much have the budget finalized at this time. So the request that I have, as the city manager, is that city council approve the budget that was presented at the public hearing as is. So, I will accept any questions at the time. The budget's $40.938 million. And it is balanced. So, having said that, Ms. Smith.
I have several questions, and I'm sorry it's taken me a long time to get through this small book that Lois put together. And some of these things you've probably already answered. I just need some clarification on. With regard to the service fund,
Yes.
how is that calculated between the department? Is it a percentage based on employees? I know you've probably answered this, but I need to know again. I'm sorry.
The city of Tifton Service Fund is, what is it, Lois, $2.9 million. And what we do is we take that service fund and we split it amongst all of the funds.
Right.
The general fund, water fund, sewer fund, gas fund, solid waste collection disposal fund. Did I miss any? I don't think so. So we split that 5 ways equally across all funds. Because what that entails is all of the administration for that handles, takes care of all the other funds out there. So that's why we do it that way.
Okay. I was just looking through the book and which department was paying into the service fund. It was different numbers based on different departments. I just couldn't understand.
Well, you have the general fund, but then you have different departments within the general
Right.
fund. So that, whatever that 5-way split is
That's how it's gonna break
dispersed
out.
amongst all the departments.
Okay.
Once it gets to the general fund, then you use a percentage of each department's budget to allocate.
Okay, that's the answer I was looking for. Thank you. That explains it. Okay. You got your book?
I do not have my book with me. I was not expecting this at all.
Okay. Well, I should have given you a heads up. On page 31 in the book, it's under, Lois, have you got your book? It's under confiscated funds.
Yes.
Explain to me confiscated funds.
Those are funds that are, the police department, if they make an arrest and they, someone's got contraband in the car or something and there's cash in there with it, then those are confiscated
Okay.
funds.
Why is that number going down?
I don't have an answer for that. I'm not sure.
Why is
Confiscated funds.
the actual, in 2014, we had budgeted about $10,000 for confiscated, and this isn't a whole lot of money in the grand scheme, but we had budgeted $10,000, roughly $10,000. In 2015, it dropped to 5. In 2016, it dropped to 4. I just wondered why confiscated funds was going down in budget versus up.
Depends on what's collected and what's available at that time.
Okay.
Because confiscated funds can only be used for certain purposes.
Uh-huh.
And once they spend them for that purposes, if they cannot receive any more in, then the funds continue to go down. But we do have state law how to account for it in a separate fund.
Okay.
And Julie, that's going to depend on how much
I know.
is confiscated. And
Right.
actually, sometimes we work jointly with other departments and split
So
up
it may
among
be
other
split,
departments.
okay. All right, on page 36, under the tourism section about Boo Drive, when will Boo Drive be paid for? Do we know?
I don't have the debt retirement schedule in front of me. I don't
Okay.
know.
What,
Boo Drive. when's
Boo-
it- when's
Boo
it get
Drive.
paid off?
When will Boo Drive be paid off? Do we know roughly?
Food drive, airport. I can't tell you right off the top of my head, but I can get you an answer.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, and then, under the splost section, and then, what happens, there were projects that were slated to be paid for with splost dollars. What happens if those projects go away? But how do we use those splost dollars? Are they reallocated to new projects, or?
The SPLOST projects are voted on by referendum, and they should not go away.
Well, I'm specifically talking about the fire department. There were some SPLOST projects that were joint projects. I just wondered how that will work if something different happens with the fire department
There's
in
a very
future.
specific process that we have to go through.
Okay,
In the event that interlocal agreement is dissolved.
changed, yeah.
Yes. And it's basically but just to handle since we're talking about fire department particularly. In the interlocal agreement, the provisions are that whatever you had before you join forces, you get to keep. Anything that was purchased with joint funds afterwards, then the attorneys would get together and would negotiate the split of those assets.
Assets, okay.
Yes. Including cash. So whatever it is, if it's SPLOST money, then it would be a 50-50 split or some negotiated.
Well, I just know we had,
agreement.
for future years, we had, you know, things relating to the Chula Fire Department or a tanker for here or there.
Well, the money's still there, it's just, it's a matter of who's gonna complete that project.
Right.
Whether it's the joint department or if it's the.
A separate.
Separate department.
Okay, that answers my question. I didn't know how that worked. I remember, when I first came on council, we were in the process at that time of, a contract with the water meter people.
Yes.
Is all that resolved? Is all that working fine? Is there any issue with any of that?
The, only issue that remains on that is a warranty issue,
Uh-huh,
and it's budgeted in the book.
right. And that's what caught my attention. I just didn't know if, that had resolved itself or not.
That warranty issue has not resolved itself as of yet,
Okay,
and that's why we carried the funds forward as soon as the warranty issue is addressed. What it is a mechanical failure on some of the
Right.
meters, the glass will fracture,
mhm,
and, we're in quite a dispute right now as to who's responsible for that.
okay, all right. Let's see, hang on, let me I have lots of notes, I'm sorry. Give me a second. All right, you answered the recycling question, that was one of my questions. On page 109 in the book, let's see, and this is under, capital, this is under the, capital improvement program. Have we set any, I know we just completed phase 1 of the Mayan, have we set any time frame for the additional phases of, renovation and restoration, continuing ongoing renovation of this building?
Not at this time.
Okay. And then on page 115, it talks about, this is under the police department, and I just didn't know what this term was. What is a vigilant ALPR camera system?
Automated license plate reading system.
Okay, all right. And that's it. You've answered all the questions. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Just need
If
a little
not, then I
clarification.
will ask the chief
I do have a statement,
about the budget.
since we have two, I mean, I know we have a quorum up here and we could actually vote on this, but obviously voting on a budget, is a serious matter, and it's got some things. Should we wait on approving this budget so we can get Chris and Mayor, to give their vote, or what?
It's,
Or would we?
I would recommend we move forward,
Mhm.
Mr. Rose, with it. You have a quorum. I have not received any additional requests from either of the other two council member or the mayor. Of course,
it's
we
been
can.
noticed and advertised.
So
This
it's,
is the date
we'd have to
Friday.
re-notice and re-advertise if we did not
I'd
vote on
be
it.
afraid that we might have to do that.
Okay.
And I can't remember the timeframe that we have to jump through to re-advertise. But
Right.
generally, the law requires us to give notice that this is the date of adoption. So
Well, I was just
think-
checking. I mean, they've given us courtesy in the past, just seeing, the same thing with them. But, I haven't heard any complaints as far as anything from them either, as far as the budget's concerned, but I was, just gonna extend that, piece of gratitude to those individuals, those two men. So, anyway.
We'd have to
So we need
So you need a motion.
Yes.
I make a motion that we accept the FY 2016 budget as proposed.
a second.
okay, I have a motion, I have a second. That we accept the 2015-16 budget. Are there any questions? All approve, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
The 2015 budget is approved,
16.
and we are
We have an executive session, sir.
executive session. I'm
I
trying
make a
to get out of
motion,
here.
I know, well, I make a motion, I'm gonna do it fast. I make a motion, we go into executive session for
Legal rules.
legal, real estate, and personnel matters.
Second.
Okay, okay, I have a motion and a second, that we go into executive sessions, all approved, so raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, we are in executive